Welcome to Smart Reach, State of the Project, Devault. This podcast is designed to bring you all of the important information about the Devault project, from the code base to the budget to the community and marketing. State of the Project Devault has been funded by the Devault budget system, a decentralized autonomous organization.
Hello and welcome to the June 2020 edition of State of the Project Devault. Now, this is a podcast in which we delve into all of the goings-on within up-and-coming cryptocurrency project called Devault. I'm your host, Cryptosi, and I'm joined by two, I don't want to call them megastars because they're both very humble gentlemen. One man who goes by the name of Spock and one by Pest. First of all, Spock, hello, how are you, sir?
Great, thank you. Good to chat with you again.
Awesome. And Pest, how are you doing?
Thanks for the invitation.
Excellent. Right. So for those who have heard this podcast before, we used to run it monthly. I think we got to about two or three episodes before we discontinued it. But recently I put in a proposal on the actual Devault network and it has been funded to be restarted again. So this podcast is actually being funded by the Devault network itself, which, as far as I know, is a first. Dash may have done it, but let's ignore that. I'm going to call this one a first, and anyone who wants to correct me can do so in the comments. So, gentlemen, thank you very much both for your time. Spock, I'm listing you down as a developer, and Pest, you're a team member / community member who specializes in support. So let's start with the most important aspect of Devault. Well, for me anyway, it's the now decreasing mining reward. Now, how is this currently affecting the mining difficulty and network security? And how would this affect the end user in terms of transaction time and coin value? I think I'll open this up to you, Spock. If you could take that one, please.
Okay, well, I looked over our difficulty and it's actually been going up in the last month or two. So the net effect of mining reward going down is that miners have less coins to sell, and there definitely are quite a few miners that regularly sell their coins. So given that the amount of new coins to be sold every day is less, and there's still people supporting the coin and buying coins on exchanges, the net effect seems to be that it's been helping the price go up of coins in terms of sats. And as the coin price goes up, typically the mining difficulty goes up too. So, and as that goes up, the difficulty goes up, the security gets a little better too. So overall, it's been looking good. Now, it's hard to say is the price going up just because the coins are less, or there's other factors. You never really know. But as far as we can tell, it looks to be a positive thing right now. So I think there was some second part to that question now, which I forgot. Did I answer everything or not?
Transaction times. This difficulty,
okay.
has it an impact on transaction times?
No, it hasn't really. We have the block time, and it looks pretty much the same as before. So, because of miners, we do get a variability in block times are not always consistent. And so, sometimes we get a few blocks close together and then there's a longer wait. So that's something that will, as time goes on, we have some ideas on how to improve on that to make it more regular. But since it's not, critical problem right now, it's not a top priority.
Yeah, and I'd seen through quite a few other projects that you have that kind of where the average block time is kind of the block time they go with. So they do vary a lot. What I did want to ask about, though, was this sharkflation, or this now that we're past the peak of the fin and it's starting to go down. We did discuss it in some previous podcasts, but with Bitcoin halving recently and the way that the default coin emission, let's say, is now steadily dropping, does default drop at set times, or does it just go down with each block? Like, how is that decreasing curve how is it formed? Are there certain points where there's like a big drop in the amount of coins being produced, or does it just drop steadily?
It drops. There's an equation that was used. I think it's like a exponential type decay or something. So it's a math equation that gets recalculated each block. So typically, probably the biggest change between one block and the next is just like one coin. So like 431 to 430 or something like that. And then you may get several blocks where it stays the same, and then it'll drop by another coin. So it's continuously changing, basically. So if you were to look at a graph, it would be a very smooth change as time goes on. And one of the reasons we wanted to do that is that, with Bitcoin halving and other coins halving, people get really focused on the halving event, and you tend to get a lot of speculation before it that, it's going to, price is going to go way up after halving.
Yes.
And, then after the halving, depending on if it went up too much or not, people may dump. And so you get all this activity around that event, and which may not be for the best. So by having a nice smooth curve, people don't really have to focus on any particular event in time. And, they can just look at the overall net effect is that the coin emission is going down. And so effectively the inflation will go down too.
Okay, I got you. Okay, that makes sense. And it does kind of fit in with the whole ethos of the project, not being all around speculation and coin price and getting rich quick. It does. Right, okay, I got you. Okay, I want to move on to the next question. It's regarding the DAO itself. Now, I guess I'll open this up to either one of you, whoever wants to jump in on this one first, fingers on the buzzers. Now, this podcast is a powerful example of a DAO at work. Even me, myself, and I've been through the process, I'm still unsure of exactly how the Devault DAO works. So is the DAO on-chain, or are there certain centralized points of failure? If there are these centralized points, are there any plans to move away from them in the future? So, for example, moving the voting away from the website, which is currently based, and onto maybe the core wallet or light wallets as they appear in the future. Is there any plans for that from the Devault team?
Yeah, so I can take that. So answering the last part first. Yeah, the plan was always to get this on-chain somehow, and I've actually looked at ways to add the voting on-chain. So I know of a method that can be used for that. So originally it was done on a centralized website, which is Devault Online, and it uses your coin balances, and you have to use the wallet to actually sign the votes. So it's kind of a combination of using information on chain and a centralized service. But originally that was just like what we needed to do to launch, because there's no, apart from masternode coins, there's not really any chains I'm aware of that have an online voting system, on-chain voting system that we could have just kind of cloned or copied. So it really needs, a lot of new code and testing. So we didn't want to delay launch, so we went ahead with that. And so, like I said, the plans have been always to do that. There's, I think, just the team, we've had a set of priorities in terms of things we wanted to do. And because we're not really getting that much proposals and the community is not that small, we haven't put the focus on improving the voting, moving it on chain. Yeah, and even if we put it on chain, there's probably, you do need website support in terms of being able to look at the proposals and information, stuff like that. So we're a bit understaffed on the website side of things too. So I think that's kind of where we're at and where we're going on that.
Yeah, I think me and you have discussed in various other podcasts about your views on privacy. And one thing that I actually learned from you years ago now is that you never seem to rush to integrate a particular protocol. You tend to take your time, see what's out there, see what works, see what's improving, what types of things are being written about in papers maybe years before they actually become implemented on any particular chain. Is that kind of the stage where you're at now with the governance of Devault? Are you kind of sitting back and watching to see if anybody puts any proposals forward or any papers forward that you can say, okay, this looks like it would be implementable in a secure and efficient fashion? Is that kind of where you're at now, or is your mind focused on other things for Devault?
As far as voting, I mean, I did find something that looks like it would work. So a kind of candidate. Unfortunately, as compared to just like privacy on-chain, which has been getting a lot of development, a lot of coins are competing and coming up with new methods. The one for, there's a lot of new developments in that area, but in terms of voting, I haven't seen much movement in anyone coming up with new ideas. So again, by the time we're ready to do this, I probably would revisit the situation to see if something new has come along. But otherwise, I think there's stuff we could already use. So also voting is going to be a kind of a low volume activity for quite a while.
Yeah.
Compared to like transactions and things like that. So I don't think the efficiency is as critical as, transactions. I mean, if we scale up, there would be tons of transactions every block, but, voting was probably an activity like once a month from a small amount of people. So it's not as critical. So I think there's stuff out there that would be good enough. And I think just being able to do something that's different than the masternode scheme, and I think will be interesting enough for us to do.
Go ahead, Pest. Jump in.
I just wanted to jump in because it might be interesting for people to know that there was also a lot of consideration in, like, for example, not paying people to vote. That the incentive.
Oh, we're going to need you to speak up just a little bit, Pest. If you can you speak up just a little bit. Yeah, go ahead.
So, like, we don't pay people to vote like some other coins. You might need to vote to stake your coin or something. Or like, did they combine it? And in Devault, so far, the idea is that you should do it because you want to participate. Right? You hear me?
Right.
Yes,
and
yeah.
the difference with the masternode scheme is you have to have a masternode to vote, where on our network, one coin is one vote. So we consider that a little more open in the sense that a lot of people with small amounts could vote and could dominate the vote, as opposed to just a small number with big amounts.
Yeah, and that's, I think, probably the main thing that I was excited about with Devault was the one coin, one vote system. I guess we all by now are quite sick of the concept that only the people who have got a large amount of the coin get to have any say at all with regards to the budget or the DAO itself. So yeah, I think that's one thing that I'm glad to hear that you guys are still focused on keeping within the project, and not just taking a quick fix, adding master nodes and then saying, okay, look, you can vote if you've got, I don't know, $5,000 worth of, or $5,000 worth of Devault. So it's good to see that the team is still focused on being so fair.
And ideally, we'd like to make it one person, one vote. I mean, if we get some robust way of doing that, by the time we're ready to add that, we probably would try to do that, which would be even improvement over one coin, one vote.
Yes. Yeah, it would. It would actually. It would. Okay, which kind of leads us on to our next question nicely. Devault is known for its strong developer team. What features do the developers have planned for DVT in the immediate future? DVT being the ticker for Devault, by the way. Yeah, what plans do you guys have for the immediate future?
So the nearest big change is to add the BLS signatures and addresses to the network. So this is basically like a competitive alternative to the typical elliptic coin signatures, which are on all the Bitcoin clones. And in fact, most of the other even non-Bitcoin clones use elliptic curve signatures. So BLS signatures have been around for a bit, and there's some coins that are using it not for transactions but for other purposes, either related to master nodes or other things. So the advantage of that from our point of view is that the BLS technology allows you to aggregate signatures, which can end up reducing the transaction sizes or the block sizes and allow you to get more transactions in block. So it's a scalability issue in one sense. And we started on that, and as we were developing it, we realized we actually had a choice that we could either use it as a scalability play, or we could actually not really focus on reducing the size and get an alternative benefit, which is privacy. So that's what the approach we're going to take. So what by actually doing a combining transactions together with the way these transactions are formed, what it'll do is allow all the transactions in a block to be aggregated into one transaction. So each, as far as the BLS is concerned, each block would just have one transaction. And so if you had 100 people sending different transactions together, it would merge all the inputs and all the outputs into one transaction. And you basically wouldn't be able to tell, you wouldn't be able to link the input addresses with the output addresses. So you wouldn't be able to tell who's paying who, or essentially that. So
that's a pretty good alternative, really, because for me personally, and this is another thing I've actually learned from you, is that privacy is probably more important than even transaction size, well, from my point of view. But if you can not see who's being paying who, but the blockchain remains open, could I then see, well, this person's had an addition of, say it wasn't in denomination. So say I sent you 32.755 default.
Mm-hmm.
Could I not then link it because my account or my address has gone down by 32 to your address having gone up by 32? Wouldn't that be enough to make the distinction regardless of the signatures?
That is a potential weakness, but I don't think it's quite as bad as that. So, example, if I wanted to send you 37.55 coins, it turns out I may have 100 coin in if we consider these coins as distinct entities, which they kind of are from the blockchain point of view. So I may have a coin of 100. So I would send you the 37 point something, and I'd end up then getting the change of 62 point something. And however, if there was 10 people that had sent values of 100, then
yes,
there'd be no way to tell who sent you that. And so if there's lots of coins, if a lot of the inputs have the same value, or even if a lot of the outputs have the same value, then you can't tell which is which. Where if everything was, unique, then you can kind of tie them together easier. So you really kind of rely on a lot of, for this to work, like if I'm the only person sending a transaction in a block, then, there's no privacy at all, basically.
That's true.
If there's only two or three, there's not a lot of privacy. So it does require, it's kind of like a mixing scheme. You need, like Dash does, or CoinJoin or something, you do need a certain amount of activity to make it private.
Would coin control be something that could enhance privacy in that sense then? If I say I wanted to send 37 default and I sent it from 8 different addresses, like some of which having maybe 2 DVT, some having change in, and then it bundled them all together, would surely then also enhance the privacy as well using BLS?
Yeah, it probably would, unless someone already had a kind of a trace of your addresses. But so
Okay.
like in the currently we it is open, so you can, there's software where you can kind of link together our addresses and stuff. But as this progresses, those, once we start moving everything to BLS, those kind of links start to go away, and you can never really tell. You can't link addresses together. So that's one of the problems with the Bitcoin scheme, is that you can, when you send something and you get change back, then when you spend that change, you can kind of link it back to the original wallet. And the other thing is that when we do the BLS, this is something I haven't really talked about before, but I think actually breaking things down into the denominations would actually help improve it even further. So that, what we could do is that when you spend it, when you get your change, rather than just giving you a change of like 37, we could have it give you change of like 3 10s, a 5, and 2 1s or something. So that over time, your wallet would end up having what looks more like a bunch of coins at values of like 10 and 5 and 1, 100, 1,000, like denominations, so that as time goes on, your coin will just be dominated, or your wallet will be dominated with those kind of coins. And so in the future, then everyone will have the same kind of coins, and it'll be harder and harder to tell, where things are coming from. Like, in other words, you won't just have someone sending from an address that has 3,733.3 or something,
Yeah.
And so that linking will get more and more tougher to do. So that's something we can do just in the wallet without having to update, having a consensus change or anything like that. And so that's kind of more of a longer term thing. So as time goes on, we'll definitely be looking, at other ways to even enhance what we consider this kind of first step of giving some privacy to the chain to make it even, better.
It's interesting because I this actual topic, I found out about it from a paper that I'd seen in a Discord. When I read about it, I'm going to put the link in the description. Remind me when we go off air. I will put the link in the description. But when I read this paper, I just thought this is a really huge deal. And I guess because I've been quite focused on privacy for a number of years now, to hear you describe what would be, it wouldn't be zero knowledge, but it would be very strong privacy, and without the massive overheads that privacy generally has. To me, it seems like it's a really a much bigger deal than I think anybody's really cottoned onto at this point. I just wanted to bring Pest in actually and ask him, Pest, have you had any thoughts about this type of privacy before? And how does the rest of the team feel? Because I know that Spock is quite invested in privacy. It is something that he feels quite passionate about. But how do the rest of the team at Devault feel about privacy and this new technology that is coming out that can be harnessed to give privacy so cheaply to the chain? How do you guys see that panning out, and how excited are you about it?
I didn't look much into privacy, to be honest. I mainly just have faith in Spock and his ideas. But I have been doing when I started programming, learning Python to program the ATM. I was doing some web scraping, and for example, what you can do now is you can say, "Oh, who voted on which proposal?" This is public. You can link it to the DAO members. You can link it to the rich list on the Coin Explorer, and I suppose that some people, they don't want to share their votes, for example.
Yeah.
So I guess that's nice. Like I guess I think I would like to be able to vote privately.
Yes.
Yeah. That is another implication too, that as part of voting, I always wanted voting to be anonymous and not so easily tieable to particular people, which is an issue with a lot of the masternode coins. you can tell who's voting or get some sense of it. And, when you have controversial things, sometimes you don't want other people to know you're voting against it because people take it personally. So I think
Yes.
it's really important. And that's kind of distinct, though, I think, from the whole question we're talking about here, which is that I agree with you that I think this is, a great privacy scheme in the sense that compared to ZK snarks or zero coin type things, you don't get a lot of bloat on the chain. And, so what I kind of described before about saying that the BLS transactions could be aggregated, what we found is, although just doing basic BLS would end up saving you space on the blocks, by this privacy scheme, it adds back some space needed to do this. But overall, our blocks shouldn't be any bigger than they currently are. So we're basically getting our chain won't be any more bloated than our current chain, but we're actually getting privacy in addition. So it's not all just easy and better than the elliptic curve signatures, because there is some drawbacks in terms of the processing time will be a bit slower. But we've been doing tests on that, and we don't see it as really a problem.
Well, there are two ways. I guess there are two ways to look at it as well. Because something else which has just popped into my mind is that would this mean, well, two things? Would it mean that you get privacy inherently even on light wallets? And also, would it mean that you get privacy by default? Because effectively, I guess all transactions would be part of the same scheme. So
right,
if they're all using BLS, then everyone gets privacy. You don't have to opt in. You don't really have that issue with fungibility, and you can use it also when you're using light wallets, which is something that most privacy coins can't get privacy when they're using light wallets. Is that, am I right in saying?
Yeah, that's true. It's, and kind of going back to another question in terms of the team, that was a couple of things that other members of the team were quite excited about, that it would be, it's like an always on privacy and you don't have to opt in or out to it. So again, with the caveat, as long as there's enough transactions per block. So, and light wallets will get it too. The issue with light wallets right now is, because this is a fairly big code update, we would have to update the light wallets to add this, which we haven't done. And in terms of if we're trying to get support on other wallets, the BLS isn't as really mainstream yet. So it's a little bit more work. And the way we're planning to do this is we'll have our first network upgrade with adding this capability, but we'll support both types of signatures for a while. And the idea is to gradually sort of phase out the current schemes. So during that time, we'll use that to make sure we get light wallets updated and stuff like that. And we'll have to see how long we'll have both of them active, or whether we can phase out the old one completely or not. But the advantage, the advantages are better if we could just move 100% to BLS rather than having a kind of combined thing.
I was about to say that because I'm assuming if you've got both running, you're going to be kind of in effect bloating the blockchain, because you're going to have twice as many, well, not twice as many, but you're going to be having the signatures of both types of transactions being added to the blockchain.
Right. I mean, we can still combine the BLS one separately than the other ones. Yes. So you could still get advantage off it, but it just depends on what's if we kind of what the mix is. So I imagine most people shouldn't have a problem moving over. But yeah, we have to also coordinate with exchanges and stuff like that too.
Oh, and that's a massive, mighty headache always. Right. Okay. Let me move on. I'm quite conscious of time. I wanted to speak about some of the GitHub commits. Well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually put one back until next month because I don't want to run out of time, and I do want to get some time with Pest as well. So the most recent commit, well, it was at the time of writing this, and I haven't checked today, but it was to undo recent renaming from Relic code. I'll put the link in the description. Could you explain a little bit about that commit, what it does, and whether or not it will affect end users?
Okay. Yeah. No, it's not. Won't affect anyone. I mean, this is part of actually the BLS code, so none of that has gone, really live yet. But what that commit is that, it's like we're really kind of combining two code bases here, at least two code bases, which is our default code, which in itself is derived from Bitcoin, and then the Relic code, which is the BLS code and is kind of new to us. So often when you end up combining libraries, you get these conflicts that the compiler barfs basically and says you can't do that. And so when I originally copied the Relic code, there was the particular conflict, and you kind of have two ways of fixing it. One is when you have a conflict, you change it in either one source or the other so that you don't get that name collision. And I originally changed it in the Relic code to kind of keep the Bitcoin-based code same as before. And then I realized that I needed to update that Relic code more than once. It looks like I'd have to do it a few times. And it was easier to go back and change the Bitcoin-based code and restore the Relic code than it was to do it the other way around. So that's what that commit was doing.
Okay, thanks for that, Spock. It does look like a pretty simple find and replace job. So why did you decide to go in for the code cleanup? And also, I was quite considering about what the ACK routine is within Devault. So for those who are not too familiar with how GitHub works, basically somebody or open source, somebody will put forward a improvement or a change to a code, then the developers will look over it and acknowledge it. But some different projects have different routines. So I was just wondering from Spock's point of view, firstly, why the code cleanup and what the thoughts are behind that, and also what the ACK routine was for Devault.
Okay. Yeah, I partially answered the first part of that, which the reason the code cleanup was that I had used Relic already, and to resolve a conflict, I had changed some code, and then realized that I'm going to have to update Relic a few more times probably.
Okay.
So I went back and done the cleanup so that I could more easily update Relic without worrying about that and just make the change elsewhere. So in terms of actually people developing core code, there's really been two people, which is Proteus and myself, and we've had help from also another developer, Akshay Nexus. It's hard to say his name.
Yep.
But, is not really a core member, so he would just go through the normal process of adding PRs that either Proteus or I would test and merge. But within the team, we kind of have a couple of different ways of doing it. So we've, because I've worked on teams before where this process can get very bogged down with lots of, just time delays waiting for things and lots of little details. We've kind of a couple of things that let us move a little quicker. So while we consider pretty trivial commits that are ones that are not going to have potential impact, certain code cleanup, things like that either Proteus or myself will just make the change and push it to our main branch. And, we have two kind of main branches. One is master, which is used for releases. and develop, which is our current kind of working progress one. And so, like I said, we'll just check in and push to that. And we both try to keep up with that and test it. So even if something gets through and ends up having some problem, hopefully one of us will see it pretty soon and then we'll resolve it. So this just allows us to move quicker. And then the other thing is that if either of us are doing changes and we really want the other person to look it over and test it, then we'll put up a PR. And so typically it's more that I put up a PR for Proteus and then he will test it and merge it into the develop. So it's not really an act. It's more that there's a PR that the other, one person puts up the PR and then the other person merges it. So that's typically the process. And then if it's from a third person, then either Proteus or I would just merge the PR.
Okay. One thing I did want to ask you, something that I've learned working on other projects. How do you go about integrating new developers into your team? So if somebody wants to, or maybe not integrating, but if somebody wants to put forward some code, would you suggest that they just come forward and start making pull requests? And do you sometimes feel, or have you felt in the past, that sometimes checking over these pull requests can take as much time as writing the pull request itself? So does it sometimes seem counterproductive to have so many new people coming in with their various styles of coding, just adding pull requests to the code base? How do you feel about new developers joining the project?
So our case is probably a little different than other major coins in the sense we're not getting many pull requests at all, or even much interest from other developers. I would say you're better off to check, informally through Discord or something with the team if you want to make some changes or do something. So as opposed to just doing a pull request. I don't think we've actually gotten any just random pull requests from people we haven't chatted to before. So, but like you said, the pull request can end up taking a lot of time to resolve or, to deal with. So, and again, I've seen this in other coins too. And, recently, once we started working on this BLS code, we we need more interactivity with any developers because it's a big change. And so if you did something that's going to, like, for example, impact the current scheme, since we kind of want to phase it out, it wouldn't really make sense to put extra effort in there. And so unless you're kind of aware of where we're going, what we're doing, just creating a pull request may not be that optimal. And to give you more of an example, not really a pull request, but if we have people say, "Oh, I'm going to do a wallet, an Android wallet or a iPhone wallet," to us it doesn't make a lot of sense to have someone spend a lot of time doing a wallet based on an address scheme that we're going to phase out. So again, that's why I think chatting with us first is the best method. So on the other hand, we did clone from a coin, and any updates that coin does, if people saw that and said, "Oh, I'm going to merge some updates, upstream updates," that kind of stuff is welcome, and usually it doesn't end up breaking things. So anyone who wanted to do that kind of stuff, that would probably be welcomed, and we could probably merge those kind of things in quicker and easier.
Excellent. Okay, the final issue, or it's only the second, but it's actually an issue, is issue number 273, importing from a seed phrase. I found this particularly riveting. There was an exchange between you and another guy on GitHub. I thought it was really extremely interesting for a number of reasons. But I'll let you take this one. How can you give us a short description of the situation in your own words? And how do you compromise? Well, actually, yeah, if you could describe it first, and I'll follow on.
Well, actually, this one is a little complicated because it kind of ended up having 2 or 3 different things in that same issue. So I prefer if you asked, actually.
Okay, yeah,
about the
it
particular
did.
Thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So the main one which I picked up was the seed phrase. I think the person was struggling to use the seed phrase, and he wanted to be able to, I think, click the words and move them out of a position once he'd clicked them and put them in a position incorrectly.
Yes. Right.
I think that was the problem that he had. But then he had merged in some other issues that he'd had, which rightfully should have exchanged, or he should have put forward in separate issues. But the reason I found it, the reason I found I definitely agreed with you then. I'm going to put a link to the actual issue in the description so people can go and see for themselves, but it was quite clear cut. But there was something very interesting that did crop up, I thought, and it was the compromise between usability and security. Because there was one thing that I can't remember exactly what it was off the top of my head, and I haven't got my notes to hand, unfortunately. But there was one thing that he had suggested, and you had replied saying that it was a possible security flaw. Now, when you're creating things like the seed phrase and trying to help people to back up their wallets and things like that are obvious, real, huge security risks, how do you compromise between usability and security? How do you find that I guess, happy medium between making it safe for people who aren't tech savvy, but at the same time making it usable for them?
Yeah, I think in some ways we try to do what the majority of other coins are doing in terms of that. I think, we're kind of going with the flow on that in terms of not exposing new security threats that, we don't want to make it, easier for people if it does expose some new kind of vulnerability that our coins don't have. So I think within the team, Proteus is a lot more security conscious and kind of has that background in thinking. So, and I probably tend to be a little more user friendly. So we kind of bounce things back and forth, and I kind of rely on him to make sure we don't, do anything that's going to put people at risk. So he's really aware of that. I can't remember what the issue is with the seed phrase in that particular issue. So, but there are, there were different options available that people could use. But, sometimes software like this, you make all the options available, but the ones that are not as secure or user friendly are there, but, kind of requires expert type knowledge. And an expert type knowledge person is not going to make some silly security risk that a typical user would have. So I think, for example, like you can use the GUI to look at your seed phrase in case you need to write it down again or check. But typically, if you wanted to save it to a file, then there's a command to do that too. But of course, once you save it to the file, then anybody who gets on your computer would be able to get all your funds, basically. So, there's kind of a trade-off there between allowing people to do things that sometimes they need to, but not really making it that easy so that it won't be just kind of done by accident.
Yeah. Another thing I noticed was that there was definitely a language barrier. I always find it positive. I always find it a positive thing when that language barrier does crop up, because it does mean that the project is gaining traction in places other than the UK or the US. So I thought it was a good thing. Given that there was that language barrier and there is now, or seems to be, interest in Devault from other parts of the world, I guess this is one also I can open up to Pest. As I think Pest is not a native English speaker. How does the Vault plan on giving support to these non-English speaking users? In the term, are they planning on doing more tutorials, audio support? How is support and the experience planned on being delivered to people who don't speak English as a first language? Is there any plans for that, Pest?
There definitely are. So I live in Mexico, and we have also a member here called Ukan. Me and him, we are working, trying to get some sort of like, so especially on the Spanish front, since I live in Mexico and we have another Mexican member, we are trying to set up like big Latin American community on like a broader international level, I guess. People make proposals because we don't have community members from China or who speak those languages.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of non-English speakers who come into Devault for support, how would you get around somebody not speaking particularly good English? Is there are there a bunch of translators? How would you get around that problem?
I don't know, Google Translate maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think like right now we can handle English and Spanish, and anything else would be difficult for someone who doesn't have basic English or basic Spanish. Yeah. So, and we just, until we get a lot more momentum and users and stuff, I don't think there's going to be any solution to that. So I think we're just focusing on those two languages. And we don't, to me, it doesn't make sense paying translators to translate into Chinese or any other language because we don't have the users there either. So it would just be throwing money away that we could reuse for other stuff. So, yeah.
So it's almost a chicken and egg scenario, I guess, because I guess until there is the wallet available in Chinese, there won't be Chinese users to come in either. So
in a way, I mean, I think a lot of the early adopters of crypto, in every country are generally good English speakers or have a decent amount of it. So, they're the kind of ones that end up, from previous coins I've seen, they're then ones that end up getting the ball rolling and start saying that, oh, I've got a community as well of people. I mean, so if that happened, someone like, let's say from Brazil came in and said, I can get a whole community interested in this, but I need to translate it. And they're kind of willing to set the ball rolling that. It could happen. We did have someone come in from, I think it was Vietnam recently, but the problem was his English itself wasn't good enough that we could really make much progress. So that's, I think if it does happen, we do need the initial people to have a basic, English speaking kind of background to get things going.
I'm wondering if Pest, I was going to actually ask you that. I'm wondering, have you found your experience to be like that, where you could get in more involved in crypto because you do speak such good English, and then when you are building this community around Devault in Mexico, that you can then start to translate some of the content into Spanish for some of the people who don't speak so much English? Are you finding that that's actually how it works out in practice?
Yeah, for me, English is like the internet language. So I'm not really from Mexico, I'm from Europe. And English has been my main language for years. So I like the actual translations I leave to Ukan, who's actually a native Spanish speaker and can do much better than me. But what I was going to ask is, do you actually have subtitles on this podcast?
No, we don't.
For example, like that's something we could look into. That would be great, for the Spanish speakers.
Yeah, that would be great. I did look into it, but then the price I was quoted per certain amount of words ended up being a lot more than I was willing to fork out for similar logic to what Spock said. To be fair, I don't think there's going to be enough. I don't think there'll be enough listeners to justify the expense. And I guess that's kind of it's
the same problem.
It's a frustrating problem, to be honest. Okay, last question. I'll put this one out to you first, Pest, and then you after, Spock. Before I do, let me just thank you both again for giving up your time to come on the podcast. I've learned a lot as always, and it's been really good. What things do people have to look forward to from Devault? I know I did ask Spock this earlier in regards to development, but from your point of view, Pest, what sorts of things are you working on for Devault moving forward, and what sorts of things could people look forward to seeing in the next, let's say, 6 to 12 months?
So I mainly focus right now on community things like the Latin American community. I would like to set up like a monthly Jitsi meetup, maybe. Like a place for people to meet and actually be a community. I think people might like that. I'm talking to Uken about who could be the host and so on. And then I have some further plans for this. The ATM I made, like it's not, it's functional, but where are we going to put it? But I think it's good for like publicity and this kind of thing. So I have more plans, more little projects.
Okay, and is this an ATM that accepts
ATM
and dispenses Devault?
You put coin and you get Devault. So
cool.
Yeah, I made this video that has music and such. I try and make some. Let's say I make some noise to get some attention for Devault. These kind of projects.
Excellent. Okay, what I'll do, remind me, I'll put a link to that in the description as well, so people can check the video out and see the ATM that you've built. Awesome. Anything more from you, Spock, on the future of Devault? Anything else happening behind the scenes that you could let us know about, or maybe even?
I can tell you a couple of the ideas we've thought of in terms of developments, and I think it would. We've talked about RandomX as opposed to ASIC mining. So
okay.
I think after BLS is done or in a better state, we'll end up talking about that again. And like you mentioned before, the voting, I think those would probably be the next two things we'd think about and possibly do. And I think it's great what Pest said. I think we've always kind of wanted to be more like a community coin than just another kind of a technically driven coin or something like that. So I'm really hoping that, the people as part of the group or part of the initial investors have been enthusiastic, but we're struggling to get to a wider audience.
Yeah. And
so I just hope we can, people can spread the word more and we can try to grow as a community. So that would be what I would, look forward to most, is just seeing the user base growing and getting more discussion going on various things. And because I think new people will bring in new ideas of things we can do. And ideally, as we want people to be putting forth ideas, either meetups or even technical ideas for where we want the coin to go. Because then it's really more like a community coin than just a small group pushing everything. So that's what I'm hoping.
Awesome. Right, gentlemen, thank you very, very much for giving up your time. I know I said we'd only be half an hour, and we've been considerably more than that. So I must apologise, but it's always fascinating. I think the problem is I don't think I've spoken to Spock in almost a year now. So there's been too much happening that I wasn't really aware of. So that's why we spent so much time speaking on privacy and BLS. Pest, also, it's been amazing speaking to you. I think this is probably maybe only the second time we've spoken. So it's been amazing speaking to you. Thank you so much for devoting your time to the podcast and giving us an insight into what you've been doing and what you like to be doing. I'm going to make sure that I remember to add the video for the ATM. Is there anything you guys want to add before we sign off? Pest first.
Just that, like I mostly focus on the community because we have great developers, so I don't need to worry about that. And like Spock said, what we really need now is to actually have a community.
Yeah. Spock, anything more from you before we sign off?
No, just looking forward to keeping this going, and every month too. Be happy to join back.
Awesome. Yeah, it's always a pleasure, never a chore. So yeah, thank you very much, guys, and for everybody who's listening. The routine, like and subscribe and all that good stuff, but also share it, because it's important that, I guess, these sorts of projects, which is one of the main, it's basically the only reason really that I decided to do this podcast, is that it's important that these sorts of projects, which do have actual development behind them and do have actual people building things and coming up with really good privacy by accident, these types of things, it's important that people within crypto are pushed towards these sorts of projects, and these sorts of projects are given a fair chance to thrive. So bear that in mind when you're sharing this. Just bear that in mind. So guys, thank you very much to everybody who's listening. Congratulations, you've made it to the end, and I appreciate you all. And hopefully we'll see you all, or we'll speak to you all again next month, and we'll have more updates on what's been going on in Devault. So thank you very much. I've been Cryptosi.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you for listening. There's just one more thing I'd like you to do. If you could please like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on, that would help us a great deal. And it would also keep you in the loop for when new episodes are released.